So you guys know that I love missiles. You know that I love long-range missiles. On my longbow build, I usually take 2 longbows, then add 1 or 2 archers. I've got a lot of locusts out there. One of my goals is to become the most feared locust pilot in the entire inner sphere. The locusts act as spotters. They kind of run around the side flanks. They try and get rear armor, which if you're looking at 6 to 8 locusts with medium lasers and the variant with the 2-pack short-range missiles, the 2 and 2, that's pretty decent while I'm literally raining down hundreds of missiles on you. This is where the long-range missile carrier comes in and its place on the tabletop. So generally speaking, if we're going to classify things as a starting point, vehicles allow you to buy in with an equal or greater weapon system for a lot less cost. What the price that comes at is the fact that you're susceptible to motive hits. You don't have the maneuverability of a mech. You also don't have the physical attacks on there. You don't necessarily have the speed or the ability to transverse through terrain. So in certain circumstances and under certain lance builds, those deficiencies are actually not as bad, and they save you a lot of battle value that you can pump into the mechs on there. With the long-range missile carrier, we're kind of in a really, really unique place because it has no armor. I mean, we're talking 12 front armor, 12 side, 12, 12, 12, and 12 on the rear. That's nothing. You also have 833 battle value. So the challenge here with 833 battle value, no armor, and susceptible to motive hits either means tactically you have to use it in a defensive role, or tactically you have to be perfect in using it so it can't be attacked by your opponent, or if you're going to use it more as a forward movement, or you're going to use it aggressively, well, now you need some sort of screening or escort units to go in there. That's essentially going to increase the battle value. So I find more than anything else, the long-range missile carrier, not that it's hit or miss, but that you really have to have a defined role and know how you're going to use it. It's not like you're going to take some sort of tank, a Rommel tank or a Patton tank, one of the heavier tanks, and it's just like, okay, I don't really have a plan for this tank, but it's got good armor, it's got a turret, it's got a lot of weapons on there. I'm going to utilize it, and it's going to be okay. The LRM is very, very, very specific. Now, what you're mounting on that, 3 long-range missile 20 packs, 20, 40, 50, 60 missiles. I like this because one of the things we try to do is build out in our lance is this idea of redundancy. Because in Battletech, in order to score damage, we need to, first I got to be able to hit you. There's going to be my movement modifiers, whether I walk, run, cruising, flank, or how I'm flying in elevation. Then on top of that, we're going to add in any terrain modifiers for you. Then on top of that, we're going to add in your movement modifiers. So, you're looking at, say, a base weapon skill, gunnery skill of 4. Then at range, it's going to be like 6 or 8. Then movement 10. Then your movement 12s. You're going to be really high up there on the long ranges. So you want that redundancy. 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is some. 3 20 packs means I'm probably going to connect with 1. If I get lucky at long range, I might connect with 2. If I can catch you at medium range and I can get into position where I don't have to move the long-range missile carrier, I might light you up with all 3. And on the 20 packs, even if I roll low, on average, 12 missiles are hitting you a pack. That's 3 clusters, 5, 5, and 2. That's some pretty fearsome damage out there. That is decent damage. Also taking into account the fact that I can fire indirect fire with a dedicated spotter or maybe a spotter that can work in the moment. The difference between the two is an advanced unit that's skirmishing, maybe like a light mech. I can have that act as a spotter. That's a secondary function. A dedicated spotter is where I take a unit and its only reason in the game, yeah, it's going to shoot at you if I can, but the only purpose of it in the game is to act as a spotter. And in my lists, what I use is either a warrior, the VTOL, warrior VTOL, or I'll take some infantry and a Karnov and hot drop them in, usually somewhere in the middle of the table. You get some infantry into terrain. You get them in a good spot with elevation. They can see, they can utilize things unless they get hit with something like a Vulcan or a fire starter. They're going to be around for a bit. They act as a dedicated spotter. So with the LRM, I want that spotter. I want to build that in. But even if it's not dedicated, there's still that option. Tactically, I need to get into a position. I need to hit. I want to cut down on my modifiers. I need to get into a position on the hex map or the wargaming table on the battlefield where I won't have to move. I won't have to redeploy, and I have the largest opportunities to shoot either direct or indirect. What that means is I'm looking to dominate the center of the gaming table, the center of your hex maps, because then I can radiate out and shoot to the left, shoot to the right, shoot to the center. If I'm all the way, say, over on the right side of the table, that means I can hit anything on my right side of the table. I can hit anything to the center of the table, but I will not have reach to the left of the table. Well, now I have to move out and spend game turns moving there. Not to mention you're going to try and redeploy. Or as I move, I'm going to be adding +1 or +2 onto my shooting. I need to keep that down. If I can get into terrain and get hull down, that makes things even better. I find, on a side note with vehicles, but this plays into the LRM specifically, the difference between a hex map and a true wargaming table makes a huge difference. The hex maps work really well because the Battletech hex maps, you can just count out the hexes, you know the range, you can tell who's in cover or not based on what the space it occupies, but the fact that it is very cut and dry, that also works against some vehicles. Where if you're playing a traditional wargaming table, it's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. You get behind some bushes. You get behind a wall. You get behind some rubble. It's much easier to gain cover on a traditional wargaming map. You know, for most players. Obviously, if someone's going to argue with you nonstop, that's not going to work. So I feel like the LRM carrier works a little bit better on a traditional wargaming table. So I want to get into position, I want to dominate the center of the table, and I want to just start shooting away. Now, this is the other question. If things go right, here's the other element. You need something in your list, something in your lance, whatever that's going to be, I can't say. Something in your lance to keep your opponent busy so they can't chase after the LRM carrier, right? They want to take it out, but there's other things to deal with. What's in the list to do that? And then the final piece tactically is if your opponent does break something off to go after the LRM carrier, it depends on what it is and where it is. Often I won't be able to stop them in time because the armor is nothing on it. It's just going to go through. It's just going to blow up. It's really easy to take these things out, and they're 833 battle value. So the only thing more dangerous than being an LRM carrier driver, gunner, tank commander is the SRM variant because its armor isn't that far off. And the SRM variant, I got to get really close up there. But you want to talk about an alpha punch. You want to talk about a really amazing ambusher. We've got that up in the archive podcast here on my channel. The SRM carrier is just insane. It's in a hidden building and it pumps out all those SRM missiles. But if you're breaking off to deal with my LRM carrier, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to be able to stop you and you're going to take it out, it's not worth me taking other elements of my lance or list and trying to stop you, because then I'm going to pull those away from where they need to be or where the fight's going to be. I'm going to pull them off to engage. That's going to weaken that part of the gaming table for me, and you're still going to blow up my LRM carrier. Is it an auto include in your list? I think if you're looking to build up your Battletech collection, picking up 2 of them will go a long way. It will, because although it's very situational and it is very polarizing, when used correctly, it really does a lot of damage because you've got the soak, you've got the indirect fire. An example from a recent game, we were in a city fight game, and I had 2 LRM carriers in the back, good position, hidden by the buildings. I had some infantry acting as spotters, and there was a wasp mech up on the flank running around. And it was just there to kind of hang out all the way on the other side of the gaming table, hang out, and once battle was committed, this wasp was going to work its way around and engage, maybe my vehicles, or try to get some rear armor, or just generally be a pain. And if we're engaged in battle at that point, 3, 4, 5 turns down, I'm not going to be able to really stop it, and I'm not going to pull stuff off. You say, well, what damage can a light mech do? It can, uncontested, do a lot, especially if you can get to rear armor or some of your artillery or other support things in the back. I have range with the LRM carriers. I have indirect fire, so I'm firing off 20, 40, 50, 60, 20, 40, 50, 60, 320 packs. First turn, I think I hit, didn't do much damage. Second turn, I hit, blew off its leg, it's now out. That only works, of course, as a light mech. Heavier an assault mech, it's not going to cause that much damage, and the indirect's not really going to hit, but it allows you an answer with the indirect fire to those skirmishers or those fast-moving things. Not to mention, in your main lance, once contact is hit, you have indirect fire. That's hundreds of LRM missiles coming right down on your opponent.